Hi, I'm Cassandra Parton, Managing Director with NextTech Learning. Welcome to NextTech's weekly live broadcast, where we share relevant updates to help you implement successful employee development methods. In the past couple of weeks, we've experienced a major disruption, not only to our lives, but also business. This week, we're joined by Professor Clive Smallman, who is a leading expert in risk and crisis management with a doctorate in operational risk management. Clive has recently completed a major project on improving crisis management leadership and procedures with Coca-Cola. Clive, we're really excited to have you on board. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, it's my pleasure to join you. It's acknowledging it's a very difficult time for everybody, and it really has changed the way. I mean, the fact that we're meeting in different places. Cassandra, you're in Melbourne. I'm in Sydney. And people are all over the place. It's a very challenging time for people. And what I've been trying to do over the last couple of weeks is to give people as much support as possible based on some of the lessons that I've learned over the last few years. So thanks for inviting me.
No, it's definitely connecting people all around the globe, isn't it? So, Clive, given your expertise in crisis management, what can we expect for businesses over the next few months?
The way that I look at it really is this is a huge disruption. So the way that I map these things out is in terms of them being a large disruption. And I'll just pull up a picture for you. If you'll just give me one moment. There we go. Okey-dokey. Sorry, that's not going to work. As always.
It's always
just a moment. Sorry, colleagues. Okay. Let's try that again. Just a small technical glitch there. There we go. That's better.
There we go.
Okay, I think everybody can see that now. So the basic idea of this, this is not going at all according to plan. There we go. That's better. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Okay. What happens during when you get into a period of disruption, and it's any disruption, it's not just something like we're going through at the moment with COVID-19. We saw this in SARS, we saw this in the GFC, we've seen it in other big crises, is that we get into a period of disruption. And when I talk about disruption, we're talking about anything that's going to last more than a month or two. We're not talking about although we get small disruptions, they're more crises. This is a major disruption. And what happens is that we see that businesses have issues with people, with operations and with money, and cash flow, of course, is the most important thing at the moment for most businesses. And what we see in terms of those currencies, as I call them, the different variables, is that when we go into a period of disruption, everything's okay, we've come out of normality, but then we start to drop and drop and drop. We go down through profit, we go towards break even, and then some of us go towards making a loss. Now, unfortunately, we know from the GFC and from SARS and other issues like this, some businesses go even further and they go down into this area. And I noticed the other day there's been some discussion about Virgin Australia talking to the insolvency experts to see whether or not they can effect a turnaround for them, which would be really unfortunate for air travel here. But for other organisations who put in place conventional business recovery, conventional business continuity plans, we see a turnaround away from loss, and we see them coming up back through continuity into recovery. And then what people are expecting to go back to in some cases is their business as usual. That's actually a new normality. I'm not sure that we're going to go back to business as usual. And they drive it back up and start to try and do their business. Now, things are changing so much at the moment. A friend of mine, Steve Brosman, who does work in sales, he's basically said if you always do what you've always done, you won't get anything at the moment, because things are going to change so much when we come out of this period. How long are we going to be in it? I would think probably, who knows, but probably certainly June, I think, is the earliest we'll start to see some locks come off. And I think Australia will really start to open for business progressively after that. That's my best guess. What other people are looking at, so that's what you can expect, a period of disruption, period of continuous recovery. But where people tend to be going, a lot of people starting, and these are the people I've been speaking to, is actually pivoting away before they begin to drop and starting to look what they can do differently now, because what they're seeing is that we're going to have this thing, we're going to have a new normality coming along. So that's kind of the best answer I've got to your question just at the moment, Cass.
No, I think that's really important. I think when we speak to a lot of organisations, they're putting staff on hold and waiting for the crisis to recover and move on, and then they'll go back to, and their words, the word, go back to normal essentially. And organisations can't operate that way. It's not just a matter of putting their business on hold until further notice and then just picking up where they left off. So I think that's really important to point out. So, Clive, what are likely to be the main problems business face?
I think the major problems that they've got at the moment really start with cash flow. Cash flow is the key issue, because there's two things going. People aren't spending because they're not certain what's going to happen. Of course, some unfortunate people are losing jobs or having their hours cut back, and they've got actually less cash to actually spend. Now, the other end of that is the pressure that you're getting from business financing, in that the normal investors aren't easily investing. Now, the banks are being very good in helping out, but angel investors, other forms of investors are not investing easily. And certainly share capital is, I mean, who knows what happens on the ASX on a day-to-day basis. I think Alan Kohler's given up trying to actually discuss what's happening with the ASX, because
there's no point.
It's anybody's best guess as to what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So we're getting pressure from two directions. The other thing, as I indicated earlier, is of course our people in our organisations and leaders, of course, are getting stressed. That's the other thing that's going on. We're all getting stressed. Some people are having to teach children at home at the moment. Others are not. I think we need, to be candid, I think we need a bit stronger leadership out of the politicians on that front. Seems to be a bit too varied across Australia. I know they're doing a difficult job, and I think they're doing the best they can. But I think that's one area we need to see a little bit of improvement is around the teaching at home.
Yeah.
Conversation with a very talented teacher, thought leader over in New Zealand I was chatting to. It's a big problem, and she really knows this space very well. So that affects the effectiveness of your people, because they're stressing. So actually helping to deal people with resilience, and I know you've got some masterclasses coming up around resilience. That's very important. I think if people can tune into those, they'll get great value from them. And the other thing that we see is we start to see operations becoming problematic as well, because some of our stock flow isn't coming through the way we would want to. We haven't got the connections to the different parts of the world where we might get some stock from, to actually, for those who are in manufacturing, may be having some difficulties. Of course, we've had the great toilet roll debacle as well, which has been quite remarkable.
There, yeah.
I've got all sorts of memes I could put up, but I'm not going to. So it's really around the area of everything is not everything is working the way that it normally has. And that's forcing businesses to adapt. Now, some are choosing to go into hibernation. And I understand that. I'm not sure that that's the right choice for everybody, because that can be quite a challenge. But those are the sort of the major issues that we got on. what we want to see from businesses who are getting into that state, and I'll pull up another graphic here, really what they're trying to do at the moment. Let me just share this one. What we're seeing, can you say that?
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Okay. What we're seeing, what businesses have got to look at in terms of sorry, I need to just go back one screen. I've got the wrong one up. What businesses are trying to do at the moment in terms of continuity is this. They've got to conserve the value they've got in their business as much as they can to keep the actual business running. Then they've got to preserve the value that they've got with their current core clients. So how do you keep the core clients on board? And a lot of businesses are working very well to actually do this. The other thing people are looking for is to reduce cost and to eliminate cost as well. So those are the sorts of things that are going on at the moment. Is that the sort of answer you?
No, definitely. I think when we're looking at that, I think it just needs to have some clarity on where we're going and you know what organizations are doing. I think it's very, very difficult during this period, during any crisis phase, to actually be thinking long term. I know, you know, as an organization, you know, we're looking at 30, 60, 90 days ahead. You know, it is quite difficult to really think. You mentioned that you see the lockdown going in play until kind of the end of June. You know, it is difficult to think long term. So what should businesses be doing right now?
My view is I think businesses need to have a really hard look at their business models. Yeah. And to actually see it's as well as being very challenging, I think it's a serious opportunity for businesses to actually look at what they're doing and start to think about how they do things. I mean, in some cases they're being forced into different ways of working because those businesses that aren't essential, their offices are having to close down. They're having to work very differently. I mean, we're both working from home, as we know, and that's a very common thing. Now, apart from the logistical difficulties of that, it means that you've got to start to do things differently. One of the big things I think is, particularly medium-sized enterprise, is managing your people, and it's a very different experience, and you've got to be a very different trust experience with managing your people, and actually working with people in that way. But I think to answer your question, really, the sort of things they've got to start to do is to actually look at this sort of thing, and that is to really start to think about, yes, they've got to start to think about how they're eliminating and reducing cost. Now that seems to be where most people get stuck. How am I going to reduce my costs and how am I going to eliminate other costs? But at the same time, I think this is a big opportunity, and this comes out of something called Blue Ocean strategy, which is a very, very well established strategic approach. They've got to look at how they can create different values for their existing customers and create new value for new customers, and start to have a really strong think about how they can create new value. And they've also got to look within their organization, what can they do differently to actually raise value? And a lot of this is being built, one or two people are starting to think about how can I use technology to actually do workarounds. So these are the sorts of issues, but it's across the whole business model that they've got to start to think. So that really is that question.
Yeah.
I think.
No, great. I think it all starts with the leadership and how they bring that message forward to their staff, isn't it? You know, if they're keeping calm, keeping their head on, you know, looking at, you know, facts and really assessing their business model with as clear as possible mind, that's obviously going to lead to hopefully the best outcome. What should we expect for businesses when Australia reopens? When we reopen.
When we reopen.
If when.
There's signs. Look, the signs are that we're going to reopen we'll certainly reopen in a what's called a technical recession, because business hasn't grown. Business has actually dropped off. So that's the first thing. The most important thing is how we escape out of that technical recession as quickly as possible. Now, that's a question of people investing in business and people starting to rebuild business as they go along. We will be in a recessional period. It's likely that we will have quite high unemployment initially, certainly I would say for the first quarter, we'll be seeing that. But we will come out with a slightly different Australia. For example, transport. I think transport will lag. I can't see the levels of air transport, for example, that we had rising up again. Now, what does that mean? That means that people will, not only do people want to travel less, they will be forced to travel less because we won't have the same level of choice. It also means that freight will change because air freight will change. Worldwide, we're going to see a very big difference in that. The other thing I think we're going to see is we're going to see a very big difference in the manufacturing sector. I think, and I hope, that we will see an enlarged manufacturing sector. I hope that what we see is the recreation of lots of medium-sized manufacturing. Now it's out there, and I know it exists before the manufacturers get on at me. I know that we do manufacture things. Yeah, it's not all. It didn't all die when Toyota moved out and Ford stopped production and GM stopped production, and we know that they're. But I think we're going to see a reinvigoration of, and I suspect that the government are going to invest quite heavily in this. So we're going to see that growth as well. We'll see services will be slower in terms of what's going on, but I think slowly we'll rebuild the inertia that we have. The good thing for Australia still is that worldwide people will still want the resources that we've got. And in terms of the actual natural resources that we export, I think that we'll see that still as the base of the Australian economy. What I'm also hoping is that we'll see a lot of innovation by businesses, a lot of people thinking differently about how they do business, and I think that's coming. The one that's worrying me, the two sectors that worry me most as to what's going to happen with them are tourism, because that's going to be impacted for a wee while yet, while we work out which countries are safe to have people come in from. I don't think we'll see a return to cruise ships for quite some time.
No.
And the other sector I'm really concerned about is education. I think the universities are most universities at the moment are in quite a parlous situation because they've lost quite a lot of income. University of Sydney, this is public knowledge, reckons it's going to lose $470 million this year. Now, the problem with that is that has a wave-on effect because students study for multiple years. So it'll be a while before the education sector will pick up. I think what will happen is that the smaller private educational system will step in and pick up some of that load. But that's a little bit of a concern because that's the heart of the economy. So those are two things I think are going to happen.
And it's a much bigger roll-on effect, like you mentioned. It'll affect. You're talking about the initial year with the university, but then it's years to come from that. You can't. That's really what businesses need to be prepared for.
Well, if you think that master's degrees are a 2-year and undergraduates are 3 years, so that's the roll-on effect. Now we don't know when our two major international markets for students, which is India and China. China will reopen and it will be okay. We don't know yet when India is going to reopen fully, simply because it's a different problem. China obviously were the first on the curve. India, we don't know where the curve is sitting just at the moment. So it's a big issue.
Don't even talk about America right now. I mean, that's
let's just not go anywhere near America just at the moment.
Let's not talk about that. That's really, really concerning. So no, I definitely understand. And Australians as a whole, we love to travel, right? We travel overseas quite regularly. Perhaps that this will, depending obviously what happens with Virgin, with what you were saying earlier, but perhaps this will promote and encourage more travel within Australia. And kind of hopefully that is something that we can do as a country.
I think you're right, and goodness knows doesn't rural Australia need that at the moment.
That's right.
Especially after the fire season that we've just had. That's a boon. I think the world will be open, but I think the world will be a different place. I think we'll see a little bit of a pullback from globalization that has been has caused some of the issues, has caused some of the migration of manufacturing offshore. I mean, I just got a new computer, and that's coming from Singapore, which surprised me a little bit. I thought it would have come from somewhere. Sorry, from Shanghai, not Singapore. So I think we'll see a change in some of the business patterns. Not massive, but I think there will be changes coming through. But I think we've got to see a slightly different approach to economy, a slightly different approach to manufacturing. Much more. I mean, we've always been. Australia is a highly innovative country in some industries, and we have some excellent science going on here. That's the other thing about the universities that concerns me, is that some of the science that's got on may be impacted by the loss of income. So I think we'll see a slightly different education sector, different tourism sector. So, and this is going to take about. I'm although I've got an English accent, I'm actually a New Zealander, and I lived in.
Get a little bit of that New Zealand in there, Clive.
I lived in Christchurch at the time of the two major earthquakes, nearly 10 years ago now. Good Lord, is it 10 years?
Time goes fast when you're having fun.
And Christchurch is still not completely recovered from that.
Wow.
So I think we've got a period of perhaps, I think probably 3 to 5 years of I think the economy will level out, but then to get back to growth, I think we're looking at that sort of time span. Yeah, the other thing I must say, and I would say this because I'm an educator and I'm talking to someone who works for a learning company, is the other thing to do is this is absolutely the ideal time to reskill, to re-educate. 100%. And there's plenty of support, as you know, Cass, there is plenty of support coming from from the government to enable people to do that. And I think it's a really important thing that businesses need to look at as well. You and I were talking last week, and we're saying how one of the things that gets cut is training. Don't cut your training.
Now's the time to spend on training.
Now's the time, because some of the costs are coming out, but it's a really good time to reskill and have a look at your skills.
I think if you think about it, while your business might be going through that slow period, by upskilling your people now, getting them ready for that reopening, but also actually, when business does pick up and you are going back into your major projects, you don't want to be taking your staff off those projects to upskill. You're going to be behind the 8 ball. But also for those people who have lost their jobs, it's really about looking at how you can upskill yourself and transition to a different sector to make yourself employable. You can do short courses. It's not a big investment from a money perspective, time perspective. We've all got more time right now, but I think you're right. Now is the time to invest in yourself, in your staff, and really look at how you can transition your business through upskilling your people during this period. So no, definitely agree.
I mean, the federal government is offering support in both higher education in key areas. Teaching, nursing, off the top of my head, engineering are on the list, but they're also offering vocational education subsidies as well. So if you know people who are looking, for work, if people listening are looking for work, go and have a look at those. There is huge support that the feds are trying to do. And also there's further support, of course. And somebody asked me the other day, how do we fund all of this? Go and ask your accountant. talk to your accountant, because the accountants have got the insight on what's available to you, when it's available, and they'll tell you the best way to structure your approach to take advantage, to invest out of some of those subsidised schemes.
Agreed.
So,
and
I think sorry, I interrupted you, but my message is to take this as, yes, it's a challenge. I'm challenged. It's impacted my business like everybody else, but I'm also taking it to look at it as an opportunity to reinvent, to recreate, to come up with new packages, to look at new ways of working, to look for new business partners, and really build and build and build and build, because if you act, you will get the reward. I used the expression earlier. If you always do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always had. Well, you won't anymore.
Yeah.
But if you change what you do, you will change what you get. And yes, it needs some invention, and yes, it is tough, no question. But that's the emphasis we've got to take. It's no good looking back. We've really got to start to look forward and say, okay, we've got another month or two of this, but then things are going to start to reopen. And again, I mentioned Steve Brosman again, as he said, is if you are ready and willing to actually get going now and start going now and keep pushing and pushing and pushing, then opportunities are going to come through.
Agreed. And I think you've said it exactly, how we've been talking in as a business in our meetings, and I think it's now is the time to, if you've got another month and a half, you may as well use it wisely, because you probably won't get it again. So I think it is definitely a good time to do that. Thank you so much, Clive. That was really insightful. In line with your thoughts, I'd like to share some one-day virtual classes. You mentioned earlier, we have a Mastering the Art of Resilience. We've also got Coping with Managing Uncertainty. NextTech are actually offering 50% off our Microsoft courses between now and 30th of June. So, I mean, if you are looking at upskilling yourself, everything is delivered online. So you can definitely go through and do that with some really great savings. So we'll share some more information on some of these courses that are coming up. We've got some really exciting releases coming up soon. So Clive, we're going to be collaborating. So everyone stay tuned. I'm really excited about that. And yeah, so definitely, if you have any questions or you want to know how you can upskill yourself or your team, please give us a call. My team are happy to help and answer any of your questions you may have. So thank you so much for joining in today. And Clive, thank you again for joining us as our guest. We really appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much, Cass, and thank you everybody for listening. It's a difficult time, but I think there is opportunity and I think there is hope. That's Definitely. The way I look at it anyway.
You have to look at the positives. Thanks, Clive.